So hi, my name's Chelsea. That is described to you in the bulletin. So I'm not going to tell you too much about myself. We can definitely talk after. If we haven't met, I'd love to meet you. But I'm here to speak to you today and tell you more about a trip that I took to Germany with what's called the Next Generation Project. And before I get too much into my message today, I want to start by thanking everyone who prayed over the trip. It was truly a remarkable experience that I'm excited to share with you today. I do want to specifically thank Bill Rader, Vonnie Ekman, the Baumbergers, Reverend John and Alyssa for all of their support through the process. I want to preface my message today by telling you that I have many, many wonderful stories that I can share about my adventures through Germany, but for the purposes of this sermon today, I will be focusing on a deeper lesson that I revisited during the trip. Anyone who is able and interested is more than welcome to stay after the service for fellowship today to hear more details about what I did in Germany. I also brought Haribo Gummibärens, which is German gummy bears. Yes, I'm bribing you with candy. And even though Haribo is a German candy company, I do have to tell you that I bought the bag last night at Giant, so fair warning. And I only felt a little guilty about this, but then when I got home, I read the back of the bag and it said made in Austria, and then I felt really guilty because this is not even made in Germany. But they're delicious, so you should come try them. I do want to give a brief background on my German experience before I get too deep into the message, just so everyone's aware of what it was, because it was the first trip of the Next Generation Project. So there are several conferences in the United Church of Christ, including ours, which is the Penn Central Conference, and they have partnerships with some of the churches in Germany. These Germans then invited our conferences to bring 5 individuals to participate in what they called the Next Generation Project. And this project was designed to educate young people about the partnership and the history of the Reformation Church, which was basically the inception of non-Catholic Christian churches in the Western world. And Alyssa did a great job of explaining a little bit more about it this morning. We also had the opportunity to visit an event called Kirchentag, which also celebrated the 500th anniversary of this Reformation. So Kirchentag is basically a biannual event that is a religious festival, concert, and conference all bundled into one, spanning 5 days in multiple locations. Tens of thousands of people attend from around the world, and though it's hosted by a Protestant organization in Germany, attendees and speakers come from many different religious backgrounds. In fact, my favorite session was a discussion between 4 women about feminism and religion. One speaker was Christian, one was Muslim, one was Jewish, and one was non-religious. I would love to dive deeper into the history and theology surrounding the Reformation Church, but just to put everything into perspective, out of the 50-plus participants in the Next Generation Project, only 3 of us were non-clergy members, myself included. So while learning about the history and theological lessons surrounding this Reformation was fascinating to me, I feel in no way qualified to tell you about it. Instead, I would like to tell you about a deeper lesson that I learned during my travels. As many of you have experienced, I'm pretty comfortable talking to anyone, and I love meeting new people, which makes international travel pretty exhilarating for me. In Germany, I felt even more liberated. As some of you may sympathize with, it can be challenging being a liberal female living in central Pennsylvania. The fact that most of the locals I interact with in Germany shared some of my political views was freeing to say the least. So even though I was literally up for almost 48 hours when I landed in Dusseldorf, I spent the first few days in Germany feeling more like myself than I had in a while in America. I was free to say what I was really thinking and feeling about the political climate both here in America and in the world. But then a reality check hit me during a serious discussion about what our church's role is in solving the issues our world is facing today. There were jokes targeting conservative people and language like, how are we supposed to get anywhere when they won't even listen to us? And that took over the conversation. And though I agreed with the beliefs driving the discussion, I found myself in tears. Partially I was in tears because the conversation was attacking people that I may disagree with, but that I know and love. But I was mostly upset because that's when I realized I had been striving so hard to be part of the solution that I was becoming part of the problem. I had become so angry toward the individuals that I saw as creating or worsening the problems facing our world that I felt the need to judge and distance myself from them, to join in the us versus them noise that consumes our American culture, to make sure that people knew that I was on the correct side and that they were not. Recently, I have placed so much blame on other people for creating deep division and hate in our society. You know, the people who are xenophobic, racist, sexist, homophobic, the list goes on. All the while neglecting the fact that by alienating the people who alienate others, I am part of the problem. While it is much easier for me to denounce those beliefs and the people who believe them, God calls us to love and respect everyone. See, I realize that it's pretty easy for me to love and respect the immigrants, the minorities, the gay people, and other individuals who are marginalized in American society. That's almost built into my moral and humanitarian beliefs. But it's much, much harder for me to love the people who make the racist jokes, who shun the homeless, and who cheer for deportation. In reflecting on this realization more over the past month or so, I've come to realize that there are two critical factors in solving the us versus them syndrome. It requires a willingness to compromise and what Sally Kohn calls emotional correctness. Sally describes emotional correctness in a TED Talk she gave in 2013 while she was a political commentator on Fox News as a progressive lesbian woman. She talks about being surrounded by people who, as she says, literally want to obliterate everything she believes in. However, she said that while most people are so focused on political correctness, what is more important is emotional correctness. This would be the tone, the feeling, respect, and compassion that we show one another. Now, up until last night, I had Jesus as my prime example for emotional correctness. But instead, I'm going to use my parents' dog, Max, to illustrate emotional correctness. Hear me out, I know it sounds weird. See, because dogs don't have language, my only connection to Max is forged through emotion, which means my tone automatically matters more to him than any words that I could say. This is why when I was younger, I thought it was funny to say, "You're such a dumb dog, yes you are," and watch him get all excited and his tail wag. I know some of you out there have probably done that too, and I still kind of think it's funny. That wasn't just when I was younger thing. But that's the point of emotional correctness. No matter what words I use, Max cares more about how I say it and the love that he gets from me. Imagine if humans could empathize with each other's emotions in the way that we can with animals. If we could bond together in the way so many people bond with their pets. If we cared less about what people said and more about how they say it and the emotions behind it. Now, this doesn't just apply to tough conversations either. As I experienced in Germany, the meaning behind words is incredibly important. At one point, I was at a youth group event with young children, and I wanted to help clean up afterwards, so I offered to help stack chairs. And I went up to a girl, she was about 15 years old, and I asked how many chairs I should stack, in each row, and she said 9. I was like, perfect, I'll stack 9 chairs. 9 in Germany means no. So I'm stacking these 9 chairs, and this girl runs over and goes, 9, 9, 9! And it took a while, but I needed that emotional correctness. She started shaking her head, showing me the nonverbal cues of not stacking the chairs. So emotional correctness is really important. But that's not the only ingredient of the us versus them anecdote. I believe compromise is another critical component of a more peaceful world. And while compromise can often seem impossible, especially when it comes to opposing beliefs, I think that's because division is often easier than unity. But peace and unity are what we are called to strive for. So let us listen to the Word of God as is found in Ephesians chapter 4, verses 1 through 6. I hope it's okay that I brought my own Bible. All right, I got the go-ahead from Melissa. I, therefore, the prisoner in the Lord, beg you to lead a life worthy of the calling to which you have been called, with all humility and gentleness, with patience, bearing with one another in love, of the Spirit in the bond of peace. There is one body and one Spirit, just as you were called to the one hope of your calling, one Lord, one faith, one baptism, one God and Father of all, who is above all and through all and in all. Here ends the reading from Holy Scripture. May God bless our hearing and living of these words. So while I was in Germany, I learned many wonderful things about the Reformation and how it powerfully shaped the course of Christianity. But I'm not sure the path of Reformation is always the right path. Don't get me wrong, the course that Martin Luther and the other reformers took was not easy. These men risked their lives for what they believed in and rejected a corrupt institution that did not serve God or her people. But for as much good as the Reformation brought us, I'm not sure that we can call it peaceful and unifying. Then again, we know someone else who rejected a corruption, bringing harm to God's people and forged his own path, who ultimately lost his life for it. Yeah, it's Jesus, in case we didn't get there. I think one of the biggest challenges we face today is discerning when to try to come to the table with those we strongly disagree with. And for me, it's important to remember that responding to institutional extremism with compassion and understanding can often feel less powerful than responding with rejection and denunciation, but that doesn't mean it's the right path. As we negotiate some of these challenges in our society today, I would encourage us to strive for compromise and emotional correctness. I believe we are more than up for the challenge. Though I've learned a lot about these values from my recent experiences, like seeing Sally Kohn's TED Talk and going to Germany, the desire to be compassionate for all people, regardless of religious affiliation, sexual orientation, political beliefs, you name it, that drive to truly empathize with all people was fostered here at St. Paul's. And as much as I absolutely loved the theological, historical, and political experiences I had in Germany, honestly, one of my favorite aspects of the trip was being able to tell people about how awesome our church here is. Because I've been coming here for almost 10 years now, I often forget how unique and special this place is. Within a denomination that is already more progressive than most, St. Paul's and our members have been leaders in fighting for equality, justice, and human rights. While I've seen inaction and stagnation from many institutions in my short life, that has never been the answer here. So, let us continue to challenge ourselves, to disagree with one another, to learn from one another, to grow together, and to change together. And let us do it always with the goal of peace and unity at the forefront. Let us listen with our eyes and ears, but hear with our hearts.